Thanks, Alex. Good morning. Good to see everybody here on a nice, crisp, cool fall morning. Yeah, welcome fall. So, I'm David Krober. I am a member of this congregation, and I am your worship associate for today. So, on behalf of our speaker today, our very own Kim Palmer, the Reverend Dave Dunn, my fellow worship associates, music director Alex Peach, our wonderful tech team in the back, and Lexi. Are you in here? Yeah, and Lexi Tangney, our Director of Religious Exploration. We'd like to welcome all of you this morning to the Unitarian Universalist Metro Atlanta North congregation, which we lovingly call UUMAN. We are a liberal faith community with the mission to nurture our spirit, strive for justice, and transform the world. No matter who you are, who you love, or where you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. If there's anyone that's here today and visiting for the first time and would feel comfortable standing up and saying hello, introduce yourself. We would love to do that so we can share time together. Any visitors? Yes. Okay.
Hi everyone, my name is Lee Miller. My family and I moved to Roswell, and I never belonged to the community before, but I've been at Roswell here for fun, and I'm so happy to be here and with you guys. I'm smiling.
Yeah. Welcome, Lee. Thank you. Yeah, and up here? Yeah? Yeah?
My name is Dorothy. My husband's name is Roger.
Roger Cochran.
And we met at the Unitarian Church in Emerson 32 years ago in Marietta.
Wow.
And it just happens to be our anniversary today that we just thought about it. But anyway, we moved in Marietta, and then we moved to City, down in Florida. We now live in Fayetteville, and we have enjoyed you, and there isn't anything like this in South Atlanta. Yeah. So we decided, you know what, our kids live up this area, now grandkids, and let's look up here, join a church, and find some place where we can have that spiritual community again.
Yeah.
So that's why we're here.
Thanks. So, Dorothy and Roger, welcome. Thanks for coming up. Is that good? So, just a couple of brief announcements. We do have two offerings that will follow the service today. At 11:15, I'll be hosting a service reflection, and we'll meet over here in the fellowship hall. And then Lexi will be having the youth RE over in Discovery Hall over here. What's that? It's going to be great. All right. And if you want to be a kid again, just join Lexi. Yeah, very good. Okay. And now, Rosie, if you're here, yeah, we have a program council moment from her.
Is this mic good?
You can do it where you want.
Hi, I'm Rosie Kopp, and I'm doing the program council moment today. It's about care circles. Donna Gile, who's the care circle chair, is not here today. So she asked me to do it. If you're new, you might not know what the care circles are, and you might not know what these colorful spots on our name tags are. But every member and associate member is assigned to a care circle, and this is our map, which isn't 100% accurate, but it's geographically based. So the care circles provide meals, support, maybe some rides to doctor's offices to supplement what your family and friends do. And it's done geographically so that it's easy to drop the meal off. So you're not driving from Lawrenceville to Dunwoody to drop off a meal. So we do it geographically. The care circles also host dinners. We've just started back. My care circle I'm the leader of is Neon Green, and we're having our care circle lunch today at my house. So, and that's to get to know each other in a small group is easier, but it's also so when someone brings a casserole to your door, you recognize who that person is. So if you're looking for a way to connect with this community, getting involved with the care circles is a real good way to do it. Shelley has on this card in the back of your chairs the second easiest job in the church. When I became a care circle coordinator or facilitator, Someone came up to me and said, they're going to ask you to volunteer, and this is the easiest job in the church. And so about maybe 8 years ago, I became one, and quite frankly, nobody in my care circle has ever needed any care, so it's just having fun dinners and doing a few emails every other month or so to check on people. So it really is one of the easiest jobs. It's all done online. You know, we do a Sign Up Genius if you need care, and it's a very easy thing to do. So consider doing that. It really sounds like it might be overwhelming. We average 2 to 3 requests per year. So most of the care circles are just getting together and having dinners. They're not, cooking and slaving away and driving people across town. So think about connecting by helping out with the care circles. Thanks.
Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned, circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the future of our unborn. Keep the circle whole. Circle round for freedom. Circle round for peace. For all of us imprisoned. Circle for release. Circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the future of our unborn. Keep the circle whole.
It has been a week. I invite you all to take a deep breath with me, nice and slow. One more. Fill your lungs completely, nice and slow. Feel those shoulders relax. Join me for just a few moments of silence as we prepare ourselves for worship. Thank you.
We're going to do our chalice lighting now. The words to today's chalice lighting reading are in your program. If you'll read those together with me, appreciate that. Love is the aspiration, the spirit that moves and inspires this faith we share. Rightly understood, love can nurture our spirits and transform the world. May the flame of this chalice honor and embody in the blessing of the love we need, the love we give, the love we are challenged always to remember and to share. And now we're going to do hymn 315 in the hardback.
Please rise if you are willing and able and join in singing hymn 315.
So now's the time in our service where we share with one another our joys and sorrows. Joys to share and magnify those with each other, and sorrow to help bear the grief or the pain that we have. If you're so moved, please come forward and stand at the microphone here, share your joy or sorrow, and drop a pebble into the basin. And if you're watching live on the stream, please enter your joys or sorrows in the chat.
I'm Rosie Pop, and I have a concern I wanted to share. My husband is home recuperating from surgical removal of a melanoma on his toe. It was more extensive than we had hoped, and he had to have a skin graft, but he's recuperating, recovering pretty well. Tomorrow, he has something similar to be done to his ear.
Stanley Parker. I have a joy. We got live music's coming back next Saturday, right here. My band's gonna play. Doors open at 6:30. It's music's gonna start at 7. We're gonna do an album release party, and so we'll do 2 sets. And I hope everyone can make it. And we do need at least one more volunteer to take money at the door. The money goes here, not to us. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Carla Capescas, and I'm so joyful today to be back here after 10 weeks away on what I call my personal sabbatical. It was amazing. My 2 children are doing very well, which proves that 10 weeks without me did not cause them any harm, and self-care is good, and I recommend it. But my joy today is to open the New York Times and see that the Senate is majority Democrat.
Good morning, I'm Randy Blosh. A couple years ago, I was honored to be introduced to a man by the name of Chuck Lewis by our old Dr. Dwana Bush, and I got to learn with him for about a year different things, and especially around the areas of communication and how to interact with people. And Chuck passed away this past week. He was quite a man. He accomplished a lot in his life, not only teaching, but also serving the community of Los Angeles as a social worker. So thank you, Chuck, for all you did, and my heart goes out to his son, Charles, and his family.
I'm happy because when I had I'm also sad because when I had the flu, I missed Halloween, but then my neighbors bring me a bucket of candy.
I'll drop one final pebble for the joys and sorrows that are too tender to escape the folds of our hearts. Please keep one another in your thoughts this week.
Our reading this morning is a couple of excerpts from the book Tattoos on the Heart by Gregory Boyle, with two very minor word changes. Isn't the highest honing of compassion that which is hospitable to victim and victimizer both? Jesus says, if you love those who love you, big wow. He doesn't suggest that we cease to love those who love us when he nudges us to love our enemies. Nor does Jesus think the harder thing is the better thing. He just knows it's the harder thing. But to love the enemy and to find some spaciousness for the victimizer, as well as the victim, resembles more the expansive compassion of God. That's why you do it, to be in the world what love is. Here is what we seek, a compassion that can stand in awe at what people have to carry, rather than stand in judgment at how they carry it. Compassion is always, at its most authentic, about a shift from the cramped world of self-preoccupation into a more expansive place of fellowship, of true kinship. All right, the choir's on fire today. Well, here we are, post-election. Going into Election Day, I thought as the returns came in, I would be either elated by a sweep or in despair by a sweep, either dancing or weeping. Instead, I find some of the results encouraging and others discouraging. It's much more of a mix than I had expected. And of course, some of the results are still to come in. For example, with Georgia facing a runoff in the Senate election and control of the House of Representatives still in play. So a deeper sense of celebration or despair may still be on the horizon. But in the run-up to the election and now in the aftermath, I've been thinking about how people might be feeling on opposite sides of the political spectrum. It's likely that here in the north of Atlanta suburbs, many of my neighbors are discouraged by the races I was encouraged by, and encouraged by wins that I viewed as heartbreaking losses. Even here at UUMAN, where most of us fall on the same side of most issues, there may be differences among us, and we need to be careful not to assume that everyone thinks like us on every issue or every contest. And I think about in particular with the joy that was just expressed about the Democrats retaining the Senate and the applause. And I just want to acknowledge that might not be everybody's position, and that's okay. The entrenched polarization of the electorate has me considering how we view people on the other side and how we might understand and feel compassion for their fears, disappointments, and grievances. I know when I see a yard sign supporting a candidate that I oppose, or worse yet, a sign that denigrates a group of people that I care about, or that mocks a social justice issue that's important to me, I feel both angry and disillusioned. How can anyone vote like that, think like that? How can anyone support a position that is so damaging to people, damaging to society, to our democracy? But I try to remember that the folks on the other side may be feeling the same thing when they pass by a yard sign or banner that I celebrate. Now, let me be clear, this is not whataboutism. I'm not suggesting that candidates' positions are equally damaging on both sides, or that both sides have valid arguments based on the truth, or that the divide is over nothing but simple disagreement over policy. What I'm suggesting is that people on the other side of the political divide are part of our community. These are literally our neighbors. They're our coworkers. Sometimes they're our family members. We are all connected. Our ability to thrive is tied up with theirs. And their emotions, their fears and their anger and their disappointment are just as real as ours. But how can we have sympathy for that when we see them as political enemies? It's funny how a series of things can shed insight on a topic at a particular time. I guess life has its own sense of timing that way, because there have been several recent events that informed my thinking about this election and the divisions that it's laid bare. The first happened about 5 weeks ago when I took a trip to Indianapolis to see a couple of chaplain colleagues. I teach a course with these gals online, and over several years of teaching this course, we've become very close friends. Although we're far-flung geographically, we like to get together once in a while to enjoy each other in real life. Last year, we got together in Jacksonville, Florida, where one of us lives. This year, it was Indianapolis. Next year, it'll be here in Atlanta. One thing about visiting chaplain friends is that they're ministers, so generally they're pretty religious. That means not only that I need to be on my best behavior, although I will say as a group we're a pretty earthy bunch, but it also means lots of church. So our visit spanned a weekend, and on Sunday we went to both 8 a.m. Mass for our Catholic buddy and a 10 o'clock service at our Baptist friends' home church. Interestingly, both sermons were based on the lectionary, which is a 3-year rotation of scriptures that are used to sort of plan the topic and the readings for each Sunday in the church year. So on this particular Sunday, the sermon was on the same thing. One of the scriptures was from the parable of the Good Samaritan. You're likely familiar with it. A lawyer asks Jesus what he must do to inherit eternal life. The answer, which the lawyer knows and Jesus confirms, is to love God with all your soul and all your strength and all your mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. The lawyer asks, and who is my neighbor? Jesus then tells the parable of a man who was robbed, stripped, beaten, and left for dead on the side of the road. First a priest and then a Levite traveling along the road come upon the beaten man. These are holy men, important men in the religious life of the community who lead the rites of worship. Both cross the street to the other side and pass on by. Then a Samaritan comes by and is moved with pity. He binds the man's wounds, dresses him, and puts him on his donkey and takes him to an inn. Then he instructs the innkeeper to care for this man and promises to pay any associated costs when he returns back this way on his journey back. Jesus asks the lawyer, "Who do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers?" So the answer is a no-brainer. It was the Samaritan. The thing that gives the story its punch, though, especially in the time of Jesus, is that there was great enmity between the Jews and the people of Samaria, largely over politics. It was a member of this hated group who had the compassion to stop and care for the injured fellow. In both sermons I heard that day, the minister or priest talked about the call to open our heart to the hated, the outcast, the enemy, to widen the circle of compassion to include everyone, even those your group has become accustomed to demonizing. This theme came up for me again in a recent meeting with the Emory research team I'm part of. Emory's chaplaincy students get trained in compassion meditation and a compassion-centered approach to spiritual care. And they get this training with the idea that the more we can understand others' viewpoints and experience, the more we can extend compassion to people with different religions or different cultures or different outlooks than our own, the better we'll be able to interact with them and provide care. Emory has already shown that providing this training has positive effects on both the chaplains and on the patients they see. Now we're applying for a grant to fund a study on why this training is beneficial, how it helps people overcome or break down those barriers about difference, and lets us really understand and connect with people who are outside our familiar circle. Like my recent exposure to the parable of the Good Samaritan, working through this grant application has me again thinking about how we might open our hearts to an ever-widening circle. How can we expand our compassion to people who are not like us, especially politically? And how would that increase our connection, our kinship, our living into a mission of bringing more love into the world? The idea of expanding the circle of people for whom one feels compassion is also a central theme in the book that our reading came from, Tattoos on the Heart by Gregory Boyle. You may have heard of this book, and some of you may actually be reading it. It's currently being discussed by our congregation in the Neighborhood Connections Ministry being facilitated by Dave Dunn, our minister. The book is written by a Jesuit priest about his experience working with gang members in Los Angeles. He talks a lot about how these kids end up raising themselves on the streets with absent or drug-addicted parents, often in chaotic or abusive homes. Many of these gang members engage in criminal activity and gun violence as rivals shoot at each other during incursions into each other's turf. Violence is rampant, and a casual disregard for the value of life, both the enemy's and one's own, is commonplace. Boyle talks about how these youth have been discarded by society and about how many of them feel they have no future and no worth. His view is that these kids are worthy, that their behavior is a kind of language, the crying out of children who are forced to bear more than they can carry. He believes that everyone, no matter how troubled, is loved by God, that the power of love is so expansive, so vast, that God is so busy delighting in us that he has no time left over to be disappointed in anything that we do. He calls this the no matter whatness of God, and his mission is to reflect that unconditional love back into the world. Our job, he says, is to love each other back to wholeness. So, can we love those we oppose over political difference? Can we really act on our first principle to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person? My brother has a friend that he goes motorcycling with. Unlike my brother, the friend has very conservative politics, and my sister-in-law can't stand him. She asks my brother, "How can you be friends with that guy who has such abhorrent politics?" He says, "We didn't build a friendship around our politics. We're friends because we both love motorcycling." They don't dwell on their differences. They've found connection over what they hold in common. A chaplain I know saw a patient recently who was angry and bitter and full of vitriol. He spoke about his political enemies, in this case, Pelosi and the Democrats, as evil, as oppressive, as intentionally trying to destroy the nation. After venting his spleen in very unflattering terms, he launched into a tirade against abortion. His face was angry, his back and shoulders drawn up and tight. His family member had struggled to conceive and had finally had their miracle baby, and he was opposed to abortion in any form. He saw his political enemies as literal killers, baby killers, and he was furious about it. That kind of ramped up anger, that kind of dwelling on conflict and hatred and enmity takes a toll on a person's mental state and is decidedly not conducive to health and healing. The chaplain, who remained present through that what felt like an attack and had to continually monitor her own reaction, looked for a way to connect, a way to help him find some calm. Finally, the chaplain said, "It sounds like your family is really important to you." The guy's demeanor softened. He started talking about his family and dwelling in those memories that made him feel safe and nurtured. By the time the chaplain left, he was feeling calm, happy, and generous of heart. The chaplain had found a point of connection, even across their deep-seated differences of opinion. As we seesaw through the rest of this election cycle, it bears remembering that the people voting against us are our neighbors. They take their kids to piano recitals, they rake their leaves, they might even donate to the local food pantry. They probably love their country, and they want to prevent what they understand as harm. They're driven by human nature, just as we are. We all want to be included in a tribe where we can belong. We're all prone to confirmation bias, and it doesn't help that there are some powerful forces using disinformation to advance their own interests, or that it's so easy to trigger anger and division. We all have the tendency to lose sight of the humanity in our enemies. We forget that it's our work to love each other to wholeness. Like my brother with his motorcycling buddy, or the chaplain with her patient, we can find points of connection when we interact one-on-one, even with those who stand so aggressively in the other political camp. It's when we treat the opposition as a nameless, faceless horde that we can fall into disrespectful behavior, slinging accusations, calling them names, insulting their intelligence. To the degree that we need to froth at the mouth and vent, we should do that in private with those we're sure are like-minded. In public, or on a public forum like social media, we should interact with restraint, with measured calm, with the understanding that we are talking about or to our neighbor. If the elections go your way, if the court cases go your way, if the indictments go your way, don't gloat. If you end up on the losing side, feeling angry and betrayed and desperate, remember that nobody was ever convinced to change their position by going toe-to-toe with someone red-faced and shouting. Remember that you're speaking to your neighbor. Although Unitarian Universalism is no longer a strictly Christian denomination, Christianity remains an important strand in our history. Like ever-expanding circles of compassion, our big tent movement continued to draw the circle wider to accept differences in thought and theology, to arrive at where we are now, a covenantal people bound by common ethical principles rather than a shared, rigid belief. Our history as Unitarian Universalists leads us to claim the Jewish and Christian scriptures as among the sources of our living tradition. That means that the parable of the Good Samaritan is our parable. Our drive to build the beloved community aligns with the mission of Jesus, to love all, value all, see all as tied together in the single garment of destiny, as Martin Luther King Jr. said. Our religion, non-creedal though it may be, encourages us to see ourselves as embedded in one great interconnected whole, kin to all humankind, recognizing every human as a person of worth and integrity and dignity. It exhorts us to be the charge we want to see in the world, to act out of love, not hate, to practice tolerance and compassion, to hold others accountable through care, and to work toward reconciliation rather than revenge. We have the power to heal the world, one interaction at a time. Let loose your love upon the world. Take to heart the maxim to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And when you stop to ask, who is my neighbor? It's everyone.
Thanks, Kim. So in an effort to fulfill and further the vision and mission of our congregation, we ask that members and friends share of their time, treasure, and talents. With this, we will now take our offering. The basket will be passed, and you can also use the Givelify app to donate online. thank you for your offerings, and we pledge to use these wisely for the mission of this congregation. So now I think we are going to do hymn 168. Is that right, Alex? And the hardbound hymnal.
Please rise as you are willing and able, and join in singing one more step, 168.
Please join me as we recite the extinguishing of the chalice. So we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Kim.
I leave you with these words by Dana E. Warsnop. May your journey know joy and contentment and satisfaction. May it also know pain and disappointment in just enough measure to grow within you good character and compassion. May both character and compassion guide your lives. May you always offer your love to the world, and may you walk your path through the light and the darkness with hope and faith and grace.